Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are slipping down a moon-washed cart track in medieval Apulia, the hot, sea-breezed heel of Italy's boot, where even the crickets sound like they're gossiping in dialect about whatever you're carrying in that suspicious cloth pouch. Inside, a handful of chickpeas so vividly red they look like tiny heartbeats. Spoiler, you probably won't survive if the village rumors are true, but hey, what's bedtime without a little existential spice? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know your location and local time in the comments. There's something delightfully strange about learning that someone in Reykjavik is wide awake at 3 a.m., while we whisper about cursed legumes. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. Part 1. Scarlet Seeds and Superstition. You shuffle along a dusty farm lane, the grit grinding under thin leather soles. Thorny hedges arch overhead, snickering each time your cloak snags. About 50 paces ahead squats a low stone hut, where lamplight trembles like a nervous firefly. A bell tower behind you clangs matins at an hour so ungodly even the crows yawn. You taste salt in the air, and something metallic fear, perhaps lingering on your tongue like an under-seasoned broth. A stooped farmer steps from the hut lantern raised. This is Pietro, though everyone calls him Old P. We won't ask why. Your imagination can keep itself awake. His lantern glow paints his beard, molten orange, the same color he swears that stains doomed chickpeas. One authoritative historical fact to snack on by the 1200s Apulian farmers cultivated ordinary beige chickpeas as an affordable protein source often stewed with onions fennel, and a painful absence of garlic, because the clergy said it inflamed wanderlust. Wanderlust or not, nobody expected the peas to start masquerading as garnets. Pietro eyes your pouch and murmurs, "Those seeds bleed misfortune." His breath reeks of last night's anchovy wine. Yes, medieval vintners occasionally infused red to hide spoilage, an odd but true fact that would make any modern sommelier spit take. You ask how a humble pulse became more feared than overdue taxes. He shrugs, cloak rustling like a grumpy owl. Back in 46, a miller's entire family ate them red peas. Next sunrise rain turned to ash, the goats birthed twins without ears, and someone's wig caught fire. You raise an eyebrow, medieval wigs were felted wool, and historians still debate whether wool was treated with flammable lye or if the story was simply kindling for tavern storytelling. Pietro beckons you inside his hut, where a single tallow candle sputters bacon-scented smoke. Clay bowls clutter a rickety table, lentils, almonds, and, ominously, one heap of red chickpeas that glisten like lacquered beads. He pours you a goblet of wine so sour it might file a complaint with your gums. Taste one, he challenges. You pop a pea into your mouth, savoring a buttery pulse with a faint iron tang. No lightning, no plague. Pietro frowns. Maybe the curse likes to sleep in. First joke lands with a wink. Great, our murderous legume keeps bankers hours. While he refills your cup and your skepticism, you scribble notes like a caffeine-deprived scribe. The candle's flame dances, throwing warped shadows against limestone walls. A draft slithers under the door-night breeze, or something less polite. You remark second joke. If that's the curse, it's got terrible table manners. Pietro chuckles, but then crosses himself. Superstition is a reflex here, like sneezing or complaining about taxes. Between sips, Pietro explains that the peas redden only when grown in a narrow coastal strip, where brackish groundwater seeps into fields. Historians still debate whether a soil-borne fungus matter root contamination or simple iron-rich aquifers dyed the seeds crimson. Whatever the chemistry rumor outpaced reason. By 1294, the regional tax rolls suddenly recorded a sharp drop in chickpea levies, evidence that commerce bends the knee to fear. Bureaucrats, it seems, have always been creative at losing revenue. Constanza Pietro's wife busts in carrying a wooden spoon the size of a cavalry saber. "Are you feeding that traveler devil peas?" she snaps, voice trembling, as though the spoon doubles as a security blanket. She slaps one pea from your hand, then thrusts a hunk of rye bread at you, the medieval equivalent of bubble wrap. Third joke. Nothing says hospitality like weaponized carbohydrates. You chew the loaf. The crust scrapes your palate, reminding you that fear sharpens every flavor. Outside, a bat slices the night, squeaking indignantly at your late meal. The candle gutter's brass holder spitting wax like an irritated camel. You mention offhand, but fascinating, that medieval bestiaries incorrectly claimed bats were birds with leather feathers, a detail that made dinner arguments delightfully confusing. A distant clatter of hooves echoes the Count's night patrol. Even armored men steer clear of red chickpeas. Their chaplain branded the seeds hostes fidei, enemies of the faith. One authoritative footnote, Frederick II's Statutum de Reparatione, listed spoiled pulses as confiscable goods. Though crimson ones remained suspiciously unnamed, bureaucracy skirts specifics when everyone's terrified. Dawn teases the horizon with bruised lavender. Pietro insists you leave before first light. If the morning dew runs red, you'll be marked. He presses a copper icon of St. Nicholas, patron of sailors and folks in deep trouble, into your palm. The metal chills your skin, reassuring as a lockpick in a jail cell. You step onto the coastal path. To your right, olive trees, older than some empires, rustle like parchment. Fun fact, certain Apulian olives boast names older than the road you're walking, Bella di Cerignola Coratina. And my favorite, Ogliarola, which sounds like a sneeze in Latin. A stray dog trots behind, tail wagging nervously. You tell him, stick around, you'll get co-author credit. He sneezes in reply as if auditioning for Ogliarola. The satchel bumps your hip, lighter than dread but heavier than curiosity. Waves hiss below limestone cliffs, offering white noise therapy long before anyone sold it in app form. You pause at a crumbling watchtower where gulls argue like sleep-deprived tourists over the best gelato flavor. Gelato fact, the oldest written recipe is from a 16th century Medici banquet. Sorry, bird brains, you're centuries early. You can almost hear the peas whisper. Why did we turn red? Good question. Why do humans assume every anomaly wants them dead? Perhaps the color reminds them of blood or plague boils. Perhaps, as Pietro hinted, the earth itself blushed in embarrassment over its unpredictable chemistry. Either way, panic is portable and spreads faster than mold on week-old focaccia. Before the sun fully cracks the sky, you tuck the satchel under a warm fold of your cloak. Maybe you'll boil them later and prove they're harmless or ignite new horror stories for future insomniacs. For now, you keep walking, dog padding beside you, heart drumming in harmony with waves. Behind you, Pietro douses the candle, muttering a half-remembered prayer somewhere between gratitude and insurance policy. Remember this taste of fear-seasoned chickpea, because we will carry it into smoky taverns, scholarly cellars, and carnival parades before the night is done. But that brave listener is a burden for the next leg of our moonlit ramble. Close your eyes, let the Adriatic breathe against the cliffs and dream of legumes that glow like embers, yet for the moment spare you their flame. Part 2. Tavern rumors ignite fear. You and the nameless dog wind up in the village of Santa Croce, just as the waning moon slips behind a crenellated watchtower, and the olive press workers trade night shift stories for dawn yawns. The one building still awake is the Three Figs, an inn so narrow it looks like two houses politely kissing. Candlelight wobbles behind warped shutters, and the scent wafting out is half meat stew, half sweat debt. You duck beneath a lintel carved with Latin that probably once read "welcome" but now resembles "welcome if you dare," and are immediately wrapped in ale-thick air that hums with rumor louder than the lute scraping the corner. Sawdust crunches under your boots spilled on the floor. Not for cleanliness, but to soak up accidents, liquid and otherwise. Every patron's head swivels toward the bulging satchel at your side, the same way cats watch a can opener. A tooth gap stable hand breaks the silence. "Oi, traveler, that bag bleedin'." Laughter ripples, but nervous eyes linger because crimson chickpeas are the only things allowed to terrify farmers more than tax collectors. You sling the pouch onto a rickety table, and the dog curls beneath, hoping for scraps or maybe worried the peas will slither out for a midnight ambush. A buxom innkeeper named Gemma, with biceps stout enough to bench press your anxieties, slides over a pewter mug of St. Martha's Comfort. The brew looks like diluted mud, and tastes like gingerbread that failed an alchemy exam. Still, it loosens shoulders, including yours. One authoritative historical fact to sip with it: by the late 13th century, Italian taverns, such as this, doubled as postal hubs, rumor exchanges, and unofficial unemployment offices. If a rumor survived one of these rooms, it could travel from the Alps to Sicily faster than a royal decree. Gemma leans closer, conspiratorial. Word is, red seeds sprout from soil cursed by pirate blood. A shipload sank off coast last Lent, so she taps the table the peas drink vengeance until they burst. You raise an eyebrow, delivering joke one. That's quite a hydration plan. I struggle to drink 8 glasses of water, but vengeance apparently gulps buckets. Chuckles bloom, but an old cobbler near the hearth bangs his crutch. "Nay," he croaks. It's the devil dyeing cloth red to lure us into gluttony. His crutch thumps again for emphasis, rattling cups. The dog growls. He's not thrilled about diabolic textile metaphors. You reply, "If the devil wants us overeating chickpeas, his marketing department needs fresher slogans." Joke 2 lands. Even the cobbler smirks despite himself. Across the chamber, smoke curls from a fireplace where spit roasted hair sizzles. You spy a miner, noble thin mustache thinner wallet, shuffling tarot cards for 2 maids on break. He claims each sword card drawn tonight foretells a new pea-related death. The maids squeal the way people do when half frightened, half flattered. Odd off-topic fact: medieval tarot originally served as a parlor game, not fortune-telling. The ominous reputation came centuries later because humans never met a deck they couldn't turn into a cosmic Yelp review. You set up an impromptu tasting to test courage: 1 crust of bread, 1 crimson pea split in 2 Gemma's best ale to chase whatever outcome. Curious townsfolk gather Carter flax spinner, even the local notary, whose feathered cap looks like a nervous chicken. You address them with a picnic of sarcasm. If anyone sprouts horns, please note the approximate time good data are hard to find. That's joke 3, and it breaks the tension just enough for first volunteer Giacomo the Miller to bite half a pea. He waits. Everyone waits. The only sound is the lute player accidentally hitting a minor sixth discord, but fitting. 30 heartbeats later, Giacomo reports he feels tingly, but that might be the ale. Relief flutters like moths around candles, but doomsayers aren't done. The cobbler growls. Historians still debate whether curses strike swift or slow. There it is, the open academic wedge that lets panic squeeze back in. You press for hard evidence. What does the color truly mean? A flax-haired merchant claims he saw red peas turn water pink after soaking implying blood. A beekeeper counters they leave no trace at all. Someone recounts a friar's parchment describing Venus's cicer, the fire pea supposedly useful against melancholy. That triggers a volley of arguments. Can something cure sadness and summon death? Gemma finally slams her ladle like a judge's gavel, ordering quiet before the crock-pot burns dry. She recounts an incident during last harvest. A winepress boy ate a handful, stumbled home, and woke with eyes scarlet as rubies. Town gossip labeled him possessed. His mother claimed it was crushed mulberry juice he'd rubbed into his eyelids as a prank. Hard to know which version sells more ale, and profit often votes loudest. Authoritative fact number 2 sneaks in contemporary eye disease texts from Salerno. Attest mulberry juice could temporarily redden sclera, fueling superstitions about bleeding eyes. Science again politely lifts its hand in the corner, while fear conducts the choir. You let the inn settle, then outline a proposal tomorrow at sun high. You'll boil a communal chickpea pottage in the public square. Invite all to taste record outcomes. A masonry apprentice mutters, "And if we all die, at least there's one less roof to repair." Gallows humor medieval folks excelled. Gemma agrees partly because spectacle sells drinks, partly because she finds your dog adorable. She ruffles his ears, and he licks ale foam off her thumb. Meanwhile, the noble with tarot draws. The fool upside down allegedly warning against reckless paths. He points at you. You toast him with your mug. If trying legumes counts as folly, consider me the court jester. Everyone laughs, but the tarot maids seem ready to bolt skirts, swishing like startled doves. The lute shifts to a softer mode. Maybe lullaby, maybe apology. Near the door, a cork bulletin board displays Writ's ducal taxes due a runaway goose notice, and a parchment sealed with black wax proclamation of a nearby city council meeting to discuss ban on crimson pulses. The ink still glistens. You copy it into your notebook. The story is growing legs, and some of those legs wear velvet legislative trousers. The night drags toward dawn. Patrons peel away, leaving smoky ghosts in their benches. Gemma stuffs 2 roasted chestnuts in your pocket against hunger and hexes, and shoos you upstairs to a garret room whose mattress is straw pretending to be clouds. You lie staring at rafters, dog snoring at your feet, ears flicking whenever floorboards groan with leftover laughter. Through a knot-hole, you see the inn courtyard where barrels glisten with dew. One drips crimson, not blood, just cheap red dye used to mark ale volume, but your heart still jolts. The peas inside your satchel seem to pulse, though that might be your breath pressing fabric. You whisper to the dog, "Tomorrow we boil truth." He huffs, unconvinced. Before sleep, one more odd detail surfaces in your memory. Some medieval physicians recommended vinum ciceratum wine, steeped with chickpeas, as both aphrodisiac and cure for kidney stones. If those claims overlapped, at least love and pain had common scheduling. You drift off imagining a monk scribbling that prescription, wondering whether future YouTube hosts will joke about our own miracle diets. The inn timbers sigh, Gemma's last lantern dims, and dawn's first violet thread stitches the shutters. Rumor has momentum now barreling toward daylight. Whether facts will catch up or be trampled, you'll find out at high noon cauldron-side. For the moment, let the crackle of the dying hearth lull your thoughts, and may your dreams be free of chickpeas counting you instead of sheep. Part 3. Church Bells and Bad Omens. Dawn slides a thin blade of gold across Santa Croce's worn roof tiles, and the village stirs like a half-asleep cat stretching one paw at a time. You wake in the garret of the Three Figs to the iron clang of church bells, dong, dong, dong. A rhythm so urgent it feels like the priest is sending a group text to heaven. The nameless dog jerks upright, ears swiveling, then resumes snoring because salvation can wait until breakfast. You lace your boots, tighten the satchel, and head into a morning so crisp it could crack underfoot. The bell tower belongs to San Giovanni in Fonte, a squat Romanesque church whose limestone blocks look sun-bleached even in shade. Villagers flock toward its arched door, crossing themselves twice as often as usual. You blend into the stream, catching whispers. Padre Angelo's blessing the peas. Again. Apparently, yesterday's rumors have fermented overnight into full-bodied dread. Inside, incense hangs like fog, flavored with pine and burnt orange peel. Candles line the nave tiny flotillas of hope that won't admit they're terrified of ending up soup garnish. Padre Angelo himself paces before the altar, swinging a brass thurible with the vigor of a man fanning away invisible flies. He's short-wide and wearing a cassock that looks recently ironed by divine lightning. Perched on a white linen cloth at his feet is a wooden basin filled with, you guessed it, crimson chickpeas, glimmering like garnets smuggled from some reckless dragon's hoard. He spots your satchel and beckons you forward with 2 fingers. You oblige, depositing a handful of your own illicit legumes atop the communal pile. They clack together like sinister marbles. The dog stays by the door, wisely observing no pets beyond this point etiquette. A hush falls. Padre Angelo raises a silver aspergillum, dips it into holy water, and sprinkles the peas as if seasoning a very stubborn salad. Joke number 1 breezes through your head. Holy water marinade, because even demons deserve flavor. You bite your tongue, but can't suppress the grin that creeps out the side of your mouth. The priest mistakes the expression for nerves, and intones a Latin prayer so fast it sounds like he's auditioning for a rap battle. Per signum crucis protegimus a Ciceris rubris maledictus. By the sign of the cross, protect us from the curse of red chickpeas. Parishioners repeat Amen with the wobble of people who half believe, half hope a more convincing crowd will show up any minute. Padre Angelo then rings a tiny handbell 3 times, dramatically concluding. But, as the echo fades, a pelting noise starts overhead. Ping, ping, ping. Everyone flinches. Is it hail? The roof? No, just a flock of thrushes dropping olive pits on tiles, a pastime birds apparently find hysterical. Odd off-topic fact, medieval Italians sometimes harvested pits from roofs to press a second low-grade batch of olive oil nicknamed sky fruit. Today, those pits merely amplify tension, and you can almost see fear measuring itself for a bigger cloak. The priest turns to you. We must bury the peas in consecrated ground, he says, eyes glittering like wet basalt. You counter gently that the plan is to cook them publicly at noon. A murmur ripples through the congregation. Some nod approval, others cross themselves again so aggressively you fear whiplash. Padre Angelo sighs, shifting from preacher to politician. Historians still debate whether public trial by food truly dispels curses, he says, deploying scholarship as both shield and sword. You admire the move. Even medieval theology enjoys footnotes. He agrees to escort you after Mass to ring the bells in a formal rogation procession, an ancient ceremony where fields, seeds, and occasionally confused travelers get blessed. Authoritative historical fact. 1. In southern Italy, rogation days were custom scheduled, whenever weather war or weird crops threatened the larder. Chronicles from Bari list 27 such emergencies between 1200 and 1350. The data might be thin, but the incense bills were hefty. Mass proceeds. Choir boys chant slightly out of key, making the organist wince like someone filing metal with their teeth. You kneel, stand, kneel again, trying not to clonk your forehead on the pew. Joke number 2 bubbles up. At least burpees burn calories, but you keep it inside. Nobody wants fitness tips before communion. During the homily, Padre Angelo references Jonah's whale, hinting that ignoring divine warnings can land you in digestive trouble much worse than chickpea bloat. Congregants laugh nervously. Sacrilegious IBS humor apparently hits home. Communion finished. The priest invites anyone still frightened to bring objects for blessing. A baker hoists an entire proofing basket, raw dough glistening under linen. A shepherd tosses forward a lock of lamb's wool bound with twine. You, not to be outdone, present the satchel again. Padre Angelo blesses everything indiscriminately. Water droplets sprinkling across a radius that leaves half the front row looking freshly misted for produce aisle display. Joke number 3 escapes your lips this time. 5 silver pieces say these peas have never felt so hydrated. Gemma, who snuck in mid-service, snorts loud enough to echo. Even the dog permitted. Because technically he's an object of fear, Relief shakes holy water from his coat like a furry aspersorium. Procession time. The bells above thunder a purposeful cadence as parishioners file out behind a processional cross. Sunlight shards through clouds, spotlighting dust motes that swirl like gilded confetti. The route circles the village priest chanting acolytes, swinging incense. You juggling peas in a carved wooden spoon to keep them visible without dropping evidence. A group of teenage girls giggles every time you nearly fumble medieval TikTok by live performance. Fields beyond Santa Croce shimmer green, but patches of drought-browned barley remind everyone that curses sometimes choose practical disguises. Padre Angelo pauses at one such patch, thrusts his aspergillum, and douses earth with enough holy water to qualify as irrigation. Authoritative historical fact. 2. Some monastic communities charged neighboring farmers for rain processions, promising improved yields. Whether water quantity or psychology boosted crops remains unproven. The priest, however, works pro bono. His fee is peace of mind, plus perhaps first dibs on the noon tasting. Halfway around the circuit, a gust upends your hood, and the peas in the spoon tremble. For a heartbeat, they appear brighter, almost glowing. Gasps ripple. You steady your hand, heart hammering like a potter's wheel. Gemma whispers sunlight through the crimson skins, nothing more. Yet you sense belief flexing its muscles, ready to bench press facts if necessary. You remark quietly that even cathedral glass looks aflame when sun hits just right. Perspective can sanctify or scare, depending which side of the window you stand. Back inside San Giovanni, the final bell tolls a single somber note. Service is done. Padre Angelo presses a folded parchment into your palm, his recipe for zuppa di ceci should your pot test succeed. He winks, almost playful, then warns the dog not to steal bones from the sacristy. The mutt wags in guilty advance. You promise to return the basin after the trial peas and all preferably minus demons. Outside, villagers disperse faces undecided between relief and dread. Smoke from early hearths curls skyward, mixing with incense residue. Santa Croce now smells like a candle store attached to a barbecue joint. You tuck the parchment into your notebook and head for the square noon sun, ticking closer. Like a slow drum, each beat asking blessing or baloney. You'll supply an answer, but first breakfast. Gemma intercepts you with a slice of honey-glazed focaccia still warm. She says the bakery gave it in gratitude for decursing the dough. You bite into the soft crumb taste anise and realize superstition seasons food more persuasively than any spice merchant. Somewhere behind you, Padre Angelo rings a smaller private bell, perhaps a polite reminder to keep up the good work. Or maybe he's just timing his eggs. Priests get hungry too. You stride toward the inn's courtyard stomach, settling mind-buzzing like the bell tower's final vibration. Noon will reveal whether water prayer and sarcastic optimism can detoxify a town's fear. Either way, you'll be stirring more than soup. Let the bells rest now. Soon, another chorus bubbling broth, clacking spoons. Nervous laughter will try to drown the lingering echo of bad omens. And, if that fails well, there's always dessert wine. Part 4. Alchemists seek explanations. The church bells have barely finished echoing when Gemma hustles you out of the Three Figs kitchen with a clay bowl of cold hare stew and strict instructions to come back with either a cure or better gossip. The nameless dog trots behind tongue-lolling, clearly convinced the second option is inevitable. Noon's public boiling is still an hour away, yet you detour toward the north gate, where Santa Croce's resident savants keep shop in what used to be a pigeon loft. Locals call it Philosopher's Attic, though it smells less like enlightenment and more like wet feathers and bad decisions. You climb a ladder so rickety it must hold its own philosophical opinions, then duck through a low lintel into a room jam-packed with apparatus alembics steaming like caffeinated beehives. Copper stills, gurgling glass tubes spiraling in manic calligraphy. At the center hunch, two alchemists who look like a medieval buddy comedy poster, Master Lorenzo Gaunt has a quill robe blotched with ink, and Sister Fiore broad-shouldered Benedictine oblate with soot-black fingertips, and an expression that says she wrestles furnaces for fun. You clear your throat. Both whirl brandishing tongs as if fending off unsolicited philosophy. Raising the satchel, you announce specimens freshly blessed, lightly mocked, ready for analysis. Joke number 1 slips out. Think of me as Uber Eats, but for curses. Lorenzo almost smiles. Fiore absolutely doesn't. She's busy weighing a pea on a scale sensitive enough to register butterfly regret. Authoritative, historical fact drifts in with the steam by the early 1300s. Southern Italian alchemists led Europe in distilling colored pigments for manuscript illumination, routinely testing soils to track impurity veins. If anyone can explain why a chickpea wakes up red, it's these two surrounded by half-finished rainbow experiments. Fiore gestures to a work table where brass dishes hold peas under different conditions. One soaked in vinegar, one in lime water, another sunbathing beneath a convex lens. Control acid alkaline solar, she grumbles. You empty a fistful of your peas into a fifth dish labeled Field Sample Unreliable Narrator. Joke number 2, Story of My Life. Lorenzo cracks a pea with tweezers, muttering about iron reacting with tannins. Fiore counters symbiotic fungi excreting carminic acid. Historians still debate whether medieval farms hosted enough such fungi to redden whole harvests, but their argument sizzles hotter than the cauldron. The dog noses powdered alum and sneezes, launching a white cloud that drifts over everything like premature snowfall. Odd, off-topic fact: alum dust once preserved pickled herring, though it preserved diners' bowels just as firmly. Lorenzo curses. Fiore laughs. Your canine assistant earns honorary journeyman status. They set a flame under a small pot, drop 3 peas from each dish into linen sachets, then suspend them like grim tea bags. Steam rises. The room starts to smell halfway between soup kitchen and painter's studio. Colors leach, vinegar bleeds. Pink lime water turns muddy, plain water stays shyly clear. Observe, Lorenzo says, pointing to the acid bath. Iron oxide, Fiore retorts, or fungal anthraquinones. You lift both palms, or maybe the peas are seasonal fashionistas. Joke Sersarker 3 lands. Even Fiore cracks a grin. While samples simmer, Lorenzo unfurls a parchment of mineral maps. Tiny soil squares glued beside pigment swatches. He traces a line labeled Metallo Rosso Fe2+, Fe3+, explaining that the coastal wells drag iron through limestone pockets, staining organics when the pH skews acidic. Authoritative historical fact number 2. Venetian glassmakers exploited the same iron-tinged sand to craft pale green Verdogna glass, prized by thrifty nobles. A crash interrupts Fiore's solar lens has ignited a scrap of parchment. She beats the flame with her sleeve, muttering that controlling sunlight is like herding fireflies with a sermon. You help tamp embers. The smoke smells of toasted vellum and mild regret. Results time. Fiore decants boiled liquids into glass vials and lifts them to the window. Acid sample ruby. Alkaline weak tea. Control faintly pink rainwater. She notes color with acidity. Lorenzo argues seawater-soaked fields swing acidic thanks to rotting algae, creating red peas without a single demon cameo. You imagine pitching this tidy chemistry lesson to the lunch crowd. Relax, your dinner is naturally pickled. Then you recall flaming wigs. Logic may need better stage props. Fiore suggests dunking a rusty nail in vinegar until it blooms scarlet, then tasting both liquids for proof of harmlessness. You adore the plan-mad science with snack intermission. For extra flair, Lorenzo stirs blue woad into the alkaline vial. It swirls to bruised plum. Reaction rules, fear drools, he declares. You nod, but whisper that purple peas might trigger a whole new panic, call it expansion strategy. Packing up, you pocket 3 vials, red, purple, clear, and thank your hosts. Fiore hands you a sealed letter for the town council, summarizing findings and judging by the flourish angling for grant money. She also gifts a tiny ampule of vinegar-red liquid as portable evidence. The dog tries to lick it. Denied. Descending the ladder, you spot children pitching stones at the bell tower, hoping to ring sins for free. You leave them to their research. Sundials claim 15 minutes to noon, enough time to reach the square, set the big cauldron, and rehearse your chemistry meets culinary TED Talk. Halfway there, vendors hawk herbs, cheese, and perfectly beige chickpeas, uncharmed and ungodly. A spice dealer waves saffron threads like golden confetti, bellowing, turn red to gold. Marketing never naps. As you near the fountain, the thrushes from earlier swoop overhead. Olive pits pinging on barrels of percussion line that seems to follow you like nature's own rim shot for every joke you crack. You remember the pelting roof inside San Giovanni and grin. Even birds appear invested in this experiment, auditioning as celestial fact-checkers. The square appears crowd-gathered fire pit roaring like a dragon on espresso. Gemma lifts her ladle in salute. You raise satchel vials and rusty nail like a conjurer unveiling props. The dog's tail drums a Cooper's barrel percussion secured. Science spectacle soup. An hour ago, you dodged incense. Now you'll boil panic down to facts or flambe it into legend. You inhale wood smoke and possibility. Showtime waits at a rolling boil. Part 5. Feasts without chickpeas. Smoke from the town square cauldron still clings to your cloak as you and the ever-hopeful dog march uphill toward Castello della Rose, a honey-colored fortress whose crenellations look like pastry cutters stuck in the sky. Inside, Countess Isabella is hosting her annual Spring Awakening banquet, a multi-course flex designed to remind neighboring nobles that her treasury jingles louder than their church bells. Normally, the menu begins with a velvety zuppa di ceci, but word of Santa Croce's crimson crop has galloped through the countryside faster than gossip strapped to a racing pigeon. Today, chickpeas are persona non grata. You duck beneath a portcullis that rises with a chain clatter, polite enough to be considered medieval door service. In the Bailey kitchen, servants hustle like theater stagehands during a wardrobe malfunction. Baskets of chickpeas are dumped splash into a horse trough for disposal, while sacks of last-minute substitutes arrive in wheelbarrows that squeal protest at every cobblestone. A red-faced steward named Signor Aldo jabs a parchment menu with quill dagger style. "Find me something beige, round, and respectable," he grumbles. The Countess will not serve a cursed legume to the Duke of Taranto. You glance at the list. Herb fritters, citrus-glazed quails, almond custards, and scribbled in panic, lentil porridge. Joke number 1 tumbles out. Nothing says opulence like 3 question marks in the first course. Aldo forces a laugh that sounds like a cart losing a wheel, then steers you toward the castle kitchen, a vaulted hall hotter than a blacksmith's sauna. Cauldrons bubble spit and hiss. Aproned cooks wield ladles the size of oars, while scullions race by with bundles of fresh fennel fanning steam into aromatic halos. Somewhere, a lute competes with clanging iron skillets' medieval playlist courtesy of Now That's What I Call Feudal Volume X. You spot a barrel of fava beans soaking near a hearth. Aldo gestures. Fava's Emergency Plan A. They're green, not red. That's progress. Authoritative historical fact in 14th century southern Italy. Fava beans eclipsed chickpeas during Lenten fasts because they cooked quickly and paired well with the region's olive oil, which by law had to be pressed within a day of harvest or face hefty fines. Bureaucracy has always loved a deadline. Still, the Countess worries favas taste peasant plain, hardly suitable for high-born palates expecting something humbly expensive. A junior cook appears with a crate of lupin seeds, bitter, until boiled thrice in salted water. He calls them noble cousins to chickpeas. Aldo snorts second cousins at best. Yet time ticks. The banquet begins at vespers, and every empty trencher will glare like a silent review. Historians still debate whether medieval nobles truly preferred complex flavors or simply equated novelty with prestige. But Isabella definitely wants novelty that doesn't murder guests on page 1 of the Chronicle. You propose a tasting panel favas for body lupins, for intrigue crushed almonds for silkiness. The kitchen brigade lines up spoons like pikemen. You season 3 prototype soups, pinch of saffron drizzle of verjuice dash of Gemma's St. Martha's Comfort Ale for depth, and ring a handbell borrowed from Padre Angelo Callback, because who doesn't love continuity seasoning? The tasters slurp in anxious unison. Verdict, favas, earthy lupins, pleasantly nutty almond broth, luxurious but suspiciously pale. Joke number 2. If color equals danger, this one is safety in liquid form like drinking insurance. Even Aldo snickers tension unclenching by a tooth or two. Still, the Countess craves theatrics. You remember the alchemist's purple vial, the woad-tinted alkaline brew that delighted Lorenzo. With a wink, you drizzle 2 drops into a ladle of almond soup. It blooms lavender like sunrise over snow. Aldo's eyes widen. Too daring, you ask. He shakes his head so fast feathers molting from his cap could power a pillow factory. Perfect. Exotic and curse-free. I hope. Odd off-topic fact, medieval banquets sometimes featured dyed jellies, molded into mythical beasts. 1. 1325. Neapolitan feast presented a marzipan dragon that breathed sugared almond sparks when squires pumped bellows through its hollow tail. Your lavender soup might not breathe fire, but it will certainly make the Duke of Taranto raise an eyebrow, and eyebrow-raising is 90% of noble diplomacy. Aldo dispatches runners to update the written menu's pigeons for the literate heralds for the theatrical, and orders the chickpea trough wheeled to the stables. Chickens cluck delight at the unexpected snack, proving curses are relative. If peas doom humans, but fatten foul poultry profits may be onto something. The dog follows drooling egalitarian principles. Meanwhile, you craft a garnish toasted breadcrumbs mixed with lemon zest, and chopped fennel fronds, a crunchy confetti that crackles like distant applause when scattered over soup. Joke number 3 floats above the prep table. Voila crumb couture, because even porridge deserves a fancy hat. Cooks giggle. Tension deflates like a soufflé hugged too soon. As service hour looms, Countess Isabella herself swans in gown layered in more silk than a spider's Amazon order. She eyes the simmering cauldron's nostrils flaring. Where are my chickpeas? Aldo gulps. You step forward with a courteous half-bow, brandishing a tasting spoon like a knight presenting a sword. Isabella samples the lavender almond soup lips, pursed brow furrowed. Seconds pass. Then a sigh of delight. It tastes of spring orchards and pilgrim tales, she declares. You resist urge to ask what pilgrim tales taste like. Presumably better than pilgrim feet. Authoritative historical fact number 2. Nobles often adopted new dishes based on color symbolism. Green for rebirth, gold for prosperity, purple for imperial authority. Isabella decides the lavender hue represents wisteria, blooming along her ramparts, thus endorsing the soup as wisteria broth. She instructs scribes to note that the innovation symbolizes resilience over fear, marketing spin, worthy of any modern PR firm. Plate after plate leaves the pass, and servants glide through the great hall where minstrels pluck lutes, tapers flicker, and stained glass windows smear sunset into liquid rubies, ironically redder than the exiled peas. You linger at the kitchen threshold, soaking in aromas, spit roast quail, dripping citrus fat ricotta tarts perfumed with rose water, and your lavender soup ladling. Confidence into bowls like lullabies for anxious stomachs. Outside, dusk paints the courtyard lilac. Stable boys laugh as the formerly cursed chickpeas become premium chicken feed. Oddly poetic, what kings reject hens recycle. You pocket 2 crimson specimens souvenirs for Lorenzo's next round of experiments, and scratch the dog's ears. He seems proud, or maybe just anticipates discarded quail bones. Aldo reappears, cheeks flushed triumphant. The Duke asked for seconds, he crows. Said it reminds him of Venetian dawns. You note that Venetian dawns usually smell like low tide and ambition, but keep the comment to yourself. Isabella rewards each kitchen worker with a silver denier, and you with a silk kerchief embroidered with wisteria vines, proof that culinary improvisation beats curses, contracts, and supply chain chaos. As torches flicker to life along the ramparts, you slip from the castle dog, trotting at your heel kerchief tucked into your notebook beside Fiore's letter. Overhead, thrushes wing home, perhaps full of belly-stolen breadcrumbs from the banquet. Their wings beat a staccato rhythm reminiscent of the bell tower's earlier alarm. You realize fear like soup changes flavor once diluted by community humor and a smidge of science. Tomorrow the council will debate outright bans. Merchants will invent new loopholes, and scholars will sharpen quills for the next round of truths. Tonight, though, Santa Croce eats lavishly safely, and just unusual enough to brag about. You inhale moist spring air tinged with rosemary, and new-lit torches letting it settle in your lungs like a lullaby with garlic notes. The path back to town glows pale in moonlight, and you follow it, footfalls syncing with the dog's quiet panting. Each stride carrying you closer to fresh questions, and you hope a softer mattress than yesterday's straw. Part 6. Market Day Confrontations. Morning heat slithers over Santa Croce like a lazy python, and you can practically hear the July sun teasing hope you wore breathable linen fearless legume crusader. The church bells count out prime, but their bronze throats sound half-melted. Even Padre Angelo seems to have dialed back his enthusiasm, letting the clappers swing in slow-motion bongos. You and the ever-loyal dog now crowned Capicolo by Gemma, after he stole a slice of cured pork, descend into the central piazza, where colorful canvas awnings flap like medieval beach umbrellas poised to faint. Market Day means stalls. Jam the square shoulder-to-shoulder wicker baskets of figs, oozing honey wheels of pecorino. Sweating politely bolts of Lombard silk shimmering in heat ripples. Yet today, every vendor's pitch somehow involves chickpeas, or pointedly avoids them. A pickle seller trumpets buy-brined cucumbers. No crimson curses here, while a spice merchant waves coriander in the air like an exorcist's thurible. You realize rumors have become free marketing copy. Joke number 1 slides from your tongue. If fear adds this much flavor, we should be terrified daily. A carrot hawker laughs so hard, she drops 2 bunches orange tap shoes hitting dusty ground. Your mission gauge. Whether last night's noble feast soothed anxiety or merely shifted it from castle to cobblestones. Gemma's ladle-tallied notes claim the town square is the real parliament. If merchants lose confidence, council edicts are as useful as parchment umbrellas. First stop Matteo, the grain broker, a wiry man whose mustache curls like a decorative tilde. He's arguing with Bianca, owner of the largest pulse stall, her bodice pockets stuffed with counting stones accounting chic. Matteo insists prices should plummet. Red peas poison demand. Bianca retorts that novelty premiums apply. Collectors will pay triple for doomsday souvenirs. Their duel is half economics, half theater, drawing a knot of eavesdroppers hungry for both drama and pricing intel. Authoritative historical fact: medieval Italian municipalities issued bandy public price lists to curb gouging during shortages. Violators risked fines, confiscation, or being forced to parade wearing spoiled goods as a literal stink of shame. Bianca brandishes such a bando daring Matteo to report her. He splutters that Bandy don't cover magically afflicted inventory. Historians still debate whether local councils created crisis loopholes to protect elite suppliers or simply couldn't draft regulations faster than gossip rewrote reality. Capicolo noses a sack labeled Cicer candidus, honest chickpeas. The peas are beige, unremarkably so. You scoop a handful and notice a red pea smuggled in like a rebel bead among bland cousins. You raise it aloft. The crowd gasps. Bianca blushes, swears it must have slipped in from last month's stock. You quip joke number 2. One crimson guest and the whole dinner party panics. Laughter bursts, but Matteo seizes the moment. Proof. Her whole lot's cursed. He tries to renegotiate price downward. Bianca smacks his hand with an abacus rod. Across the piazza, a traveling apothecary displays glass vials of anti-scarlet elixir, described as distilled chamomile mint, and extract of electrum and alloy prized by alchemists who couldn't afford straight gold. Odd off-topic fact. Ancient Romans believed electrum could detect poison by changing color conveniently profitable mythology for jewelry vendors with tarnish issues. The apothecary offers you a free sample, claims it neutralizes P. perils. You decline, stating your internal organs are busy enough translating last night's lavender soup. Tension spikes when the town beadle strides in, scroll unfolded like a sail. He reads the preliminary council proclamation debate postponed until sunset, but urging prudence in all chickpea transactions. Merchants interpret that as open season for negotiation warfare. Prices seesaw minute by minute. One cart drops to half a denier per sack. Next leaps to triple for limited cursed edition. Spectators cheer price swings like jousting lances. Capicolo darts beneath legs to scavenge crumbs. He emerges with a bread crust shaped suspiciously like Italy boot and all. You set up an impromptu truth table on a wine barrel, laying out 3 legumes beige crimson and yesterday's lavender-tinged fava for color contrast. Using Fiore's portable vinegar vial, you demonstrate how acidity can coax a timid blush from even the palest pea. Gasps ripple as the beige seed blushes pink under vinegar, drizzle a chemistry magic trick that converts fear into fascination. Joke number 3. Congratulations, folks, your lunch suffers from stage fright, not Satan. Even Matteo chuckles, though he quickly asks if vinegar discounts apply. Bianca seizes the showmanship to hawk artisan pickled chickpeas chrism of the kitchen. Matteo pivots, selling lime water washed purified peas. Competition blossoms from tension like basil in July heat. The crowd's mood flips from dread to entrepreneurial mania. You realize that in markets, economics outruns theology when profit margins wink seductively enough. To test morale, you purchase a loaf of olive stud bread topped with what looks like red chickpeas. The baker winks, dyed with beet juice. You bite in. The sweet earthiness pairs shockingly well with cumin. A nearby minstrel improvises a tune about the knight who courted a crimson chickpea, rhyming amore with legume through creative vowel stretching. Street children clap, and somebody tosses a coin that ricochets off the minstrel's lute with perfect cymbal timing. Authoritative historical fact number 2. Color-stained foods often heralded seasonal fairs. Siamese bakers added saffron to bread during paleo celebrations. Neapolitan confectioners dusted sugar with indigo during royal weddings. Santa Croce, it seems, is accidentally hosting a crimson fair. Vendors begin tying scraps of red ribbon to awnings, free branding, courtesy of fear turned fashion. Yet not everyone dances. At the fountain stands old Pietro, our barley-field friend, eyeing the frenzy with furrowed brows. He confides that his harvest payment depends on chickpea prices. A market crash could sink his farm. You reassure him that merchants now treat crimson peas like precious spice, but he shakes his head. Speculation bites farmers last. You wonder aloud whether city fathers will tax the red variant higher for public health, effectively burying small growers. Pietro mutters a prayer to St. Nicholas, then hands you 2 envelopes. One for Lorenzo and Fiore useful soil samples, and one for the council plea for farmer protections. You tuck them beside Isabella's silk kerchief, your notebook now thicker than a minor folio. High noon sizzles overhead. Vendor shouts morph into fatigue yawns. Awnings sag like flags after battle. You spot Gemma lugging a barrel of St. Martha's Comfort toward the 3 figs, ready to serve a market meltdown special. You tag along pockets clinking with leftover coriander seeds Bianca slipped you as thanks. Capicolo trots after paw pads dusty crimson from trampled peas. On the inn terrace, you and Gemma tally. Takeaways, fear sells fast. Scoffing sells faster, but story sells fastest. She raises a mug to cursed legumes. May they keep my tavern busy all year. You toast back mindful that markets can pivot again at sunset when the council gavels down. The innkeeper winks. Then let's drink before logic ruins everything. As amber ale foams under your mustache, acquired from dust, not genetics, you muse that the square felt like a stock exchange wearing burlap. Everyone traded in rumors as readily as coins, each shout rewriting the price of superstition. Capicolo curls at your feet, dreaming perhaps of a land where bread crusts fall from the sky, and peas wield no power. Heat finally breaks. A sea breeze sweeps inland, rattling linen awnings like applause receding backstage. Vendors pack crates, some whistling optimistic tunes, others muttering over ledger scars. Tomorrow's headlines, if Monk's etched newspapers would read, Crimson Chickpea Rally closes up 3 deniers. But tonight, debate will hop from stall to council hall, and you plan to be there vinegar vial at the ready, just in case logic needs an encore. For now, you savor Gemma's ale, the peppery tickle of coriander in your pocket, and the knowledge that panic like dough can rise or collapse depending on the hands that need it. The sun tilts west, casting stall shadows long and thin. The piazza quiets, but the story's heartbeat drums on steady stubborn and just a shade crimson under the skin. Part 7. Plague memories resurface. Late afternoon casts Santa Croce in sepia, as if someone has draped an old vellum manuscript over the sun. You follow Capicolo through narrow alleys toward the hospice quarter, past shuttered windows, past herb bundles hanging like upside-down prayers. Because Gemma whispered that the Vecchi, the village elders, gather there each day to swap memories, the way gamblers trade dice. If anybody can explain why scarlet chickpeas yank at ancient dread like a snagged fishhook, it's the folks who still sniff the air for ghosts of pandemics. A tiled courtyard opens before you, shaded by a single cassia tree whose yellow blossoms drift onto worn benches, and balding heads alike. 6 elders sit in a semicircle, canes pointed inward like the spears of a comically slow phalanx. At their center, Nonna Loretta cheeks sun-soft, but eyes sharp enough to slice parchment. She gestures for you to join, so you perch on a cracked stone planter. While Capicolo flops at her feet, dogs know whom to impress. Straight away, Loretta points at the satchel. Ceci Rossi. Red chickpeas, her voice carries the gravity of a tolling bell. You nod. The circle sighs as one, a sound like a bellows exhaling dust. Nonno Cesare, whose beard resembles a frost-covered shrub, rasps in. Last time we saw food turn that color, half the coast wore plague masks. Your pulse quickens. You're about to receive a living footnote. Authoritative, historical fact arrives on cue when the Black Death surged into Apulia in 1348. Chroniclers recorded blood-specked grains and wine-red vegetables among the many portents presaging death carts. Science today chalks such hues up to mold and mineral runoff, but 14th century Italians filed color change under incoming apocalypse. Loretta recounts her grandmother's tale gory in the polite way elderly storytellers manage. Villagers spotted scarlet flecks on fava beans one July, and by harvest's end the plague wagons rattled through. A doctor in plague-beak regalia advised tossing every crimson kernel into the sea, then promptly died of fever himself, which felt like heaven signing the prescription, Loretta adds. Joke number 1 floats from your lips. A second opinion might have been nice, but the first one expired. The elders chuckle, but the sound curls inward laughter, wearing a black veil. Cesare opens a walnut box and extracts a relic, an iron pomander ball perforated with tiny crosses. He unscrews the lid to reveal dried rosemary and lavender, still faintly aromatic centuries later. Odd, off-topic fact, some medieval nobles stuffed pomanders with crushed emeralds, believing powdered jewels warded infection, and presumably bankruptcy wasn't a disease. Cesare claims his herb-filled orb survived 2 cholera scares and 1 scandalous elopement. You believe at least 2/3 of that. The conversation turns to this season's reddish peas. Nonna Bianca, cheeks soft as overripe peaches, leans forward. If color returns, does plague follow? She asks, pinching a blossom like she could wring an answer from it. Historians still debate whether pestis rode in on dirty ships alone, or if soil signs like crimson crops announced it first. Cesare mutters, providing the required phrase and gently tapping his cane in footnote rhythm. You describe Lorenzo and Fiore's vinegar demonstration, explaining iron oxidation like stage magic minus the devil. The elders listen, brows knitted into a communal scarf. Yet logic shimmers thin. Plague memories stain thicker than evidence. You realize fear of old ghosts can out-argue fresh chemistry. Joke number 2 attempts to lighten. At least we're no longer blaming comets for stomach aches. Loretta retorts. Speak for yourself. My rheumatism flares every time Mars looks angry. Touché. Sunlight slants sharper. Council gavel time nears. You ask permission to relay their stories. Plague cart screeches pomander, perfume to the city fathers. Loretta nods, but presses a warning onto your palm, a wafer of beeswax imprinted with St. Roch protector against pestilence. She whispers, knowledge needs luck. The disc smells of honey and frankincense, equal parts comfort and caution. Capicolo sniffs the talisman before trotting off, tail wagging like a metronome. You thank each elder in turn, noticing how their eyes soften when addressed individually. Fear disperses in small doses like vinegar in broth. Cesare gifts you the pomander on loan until the peas behave. You clip it to your belt. The herb's scent wafts upward, mingling with street corner aromas of garlic and curiosity. Back toward the piazza, church bells rehearse half-heartedly for the evening session. You take a side street shortcut and nearly collide with 2 novice friars balancing crates of votive candles. They gossip that Padre Angelo plans a midnight vigil in case the council botches things. Joke number 3 leaps out. Nothing secures a good night's sleep like scheduled panic. The friars giggle before scurrying away, beeswax tapers clinking like nervous xylophones. Rounding the last corner, you spot Pietro arguing outside the municipal hall parchment, plea rolled like a battering ram. He brightens at your approach. You show him St. Roch's wafer, and the pomander summoning every whiff of elder gravitas to bolster his case. Together, you pass beneath a carved lintel depicting justice with sword and scales, both chipped, which feels ominously literal. Inside, torches sputter against marble walls, their smoke scribbling gray diacritics over municipal scrolls. Counselors murmur in benches, arranged horseshoe-style quills poised like stingers. Countess Isabella sits as honorary observer lavender kerchief at her throat, proclaiming last night's victory. To her left, Aldo scribbles menu triumphs onto notepaper that desperately wants to become a decree establishing soup-based foreign policy. You place the pomander on a side table beeswax saint atop, and set Pietro's plea beside Fiore's soil analysis. The contrast, fear memory versus chemical method, makes a tidy still life past and present arm wrestling across parchment. Counselor Marco, who sachets intellect like a flourish cape, asks you to summarize. You keep it crisp, vinegar experiment proves chemistry, elder testimonies prove psychology. Solutions must honor both, or the market will yo-yo until peas learn to talk. Murmurs rise, swirl, settle. An older counselor, eyes rimmed with plague-era wisdom, invokes the Latin maxim, caveat panis. Let the bread buyer beware. He proposes an advisory label, crimson peas must be soaked in vinegar before sale. Younger members counter with taxation or outright bans. Isabella clears her throat, reminding them that royal kitchens now tout wisteria broth and that overt bans could kneecap exports before they even sprout. Economics hums under every sentence like a swarm of bees disguised as diplomacy. Debate lengthens. Oil lamps hiss. You watch counselors weigh plague ghosts against vinegar vials, counting votes on fingers still smudged with cassia pollen. Eventually, they order a recess. Final ruling will come at moonrise after consulting a visiting physician from Bari, another cameo in the carousel of experts. You inhale pomander, lavender. Exhale a sigh flavored with distant pandemics and present ambiguities. Outside, twilight melts stone walls pastel. Capicolo greets you with a bread crust trophy tonight, shaped like a plague doctor's beak, uncanny dog humor. You scratch his ears and head for the Three Figs, where Gemma surely stokes a stew pot timed to counsel intermission rush. A breeze kicks dust into spirals that briefly tint sunset crimson, reminding you how sky and soil share pigments and warnings alike. As lamps wink on, you realize the elders' seance under the cassia tree wasn't just a history lesson. It was emotional archaeology. You vow to carry their memories as carefully as Fiore's data. Both are ingredients in tomorrow's calmer stew. Somewhere behind you, the council bell clangs, once summoning its physician witness. The night will be long, but knowledge, luck, and a good joke or three might yet outlive long-buried plagues and brand-new fears. Part 8. Farming Families Divide. Morning breaks with an impatient rooster crow that sounds like someone scraping a rusty hinge across a tambourine skin. Music critics would rate it, 1 star would not clap along. You and Capicolo trudge east toward the terraced hills outside Santa Croce, where chickpea plants both beige and scandalously crimson wink beneath dew, like rows of confetti caught partying after curfew. Today's mission referee, a slow-burn feud between the Simeoni brothers' heirs to one of the region's fattest plots and rumor holds to its fattest egos. The farmstead looks peaceful enough, limestone farmhouse, low stone wall vines, climbing window grates as though auditioning for a romance mural. Yet tension hangs thicker than smoke in a cheese-curing shed. You knock. Matteo Simeoni, the elder brother, swings open the door with the wary expression of a man expecting tax collectors or, worse, recipe bloggers. He flashes a forced grin when he sees only you and Capicolo, but his eyes flick instantly to the satchel at your side. Here for the curse seeds are you. No hello, straight to business. Joke number 1 materializes I go where the legumes tell me. We're codependent. Matteo's laugh barks out, but his shoulders stay rigid. Authoritative historical fact to set the stage by the early 14th century tenant contracts in Apulia often specified which crops must occupy, which terraces in failure could cost a farmer 2/3 of his expected harvest rent. Chickpeas, high protein and soil-friendly, were usually non-negotiable staples. That was before some of them decided to turn the color of Cabernet and invite moral panic to dinner. Matteo leads you past a granary into a courtyard where his younger brother Raphael hammers a broken plowshare with altogether unnecessary enthusiasm. Bang, spark, muttered oath, each clang a punctuation mark in sibling debate. Raffaele wipes soot on his tunic, spots the satchel, and breaks into a grin wider than the Adriatic. You've got seed capital, he shouts, delighted at his own pun. Matteo groans. Their dynamic is clear. Elder is caution. Younger is chaos wrapped in optimism and straw dust. They wave you toward a rough wooden table strewn with parchment's seed samples, and an abacus embroidering the surface with tiny wooden exclamation points. Raphael pulls out a crimson pod, the size of your thumb, extra-large experimental variety he claims could fetch triple at the Bari grain exchange. Matteo counters that triple profit equals triple funeral cost if townsfolk refuse to touch the crop. You're not sure that math checks out, but sibling logic obeys emotional rather than numerical laws. You offer to function as impartial taste buds and traveling focus group. The brothers agree mostly because they trust outsiders to mediate when blood ties threaten to snap like over-dried pasta. Raphael fetches 2 earthen bowls, one with pale chickpeas, one with crimson giants. He douses both in fresh well water and invites you to sample raw. Apparently, patience never made the family crest. You crunch, beige, nutty, pleasant. Crimson, slightly earthy, no sign of brimstone. You declare the red variant flavor forward, which sounds fancy enough that Matteo raises an eyebrow. Capicolo demands equal representation. He munches both and declares via tail wag they taste identical, though the red ones photograph better. Matteo changes tack. Color bleeds into the soil. What if it stains wheat? Raphael rolls his eyes so dramatically they deserve their own Latin caption. Joke number 2 escapes your lips. If wheat starts blushing, we'll sell artisanal pink bread to nobles, problem monetized. Matteo's lips twitch, but he's not convinced. You propose a stroll through the fields. The brothers lead you to a terrace where beige chickpeas sway like polite wedding guests, and one row over crimson plants glow as if someone upgraded their chlorophyll to stage lighting. Dew drops refract sunrise through red hulls, scattering tiny rubies on the soil surface. Raphael beams proud enough to power a lighthouse. Odd, off-topic fact surfaces. As you walk in medieval bestiaries, the chameleon was rumored to live solely on air, and sunshine inspiring monks to attempt chameleon fasting, standing outdoors, inhaling deeply during Lent to shave a day off actual food deprivation. The brothers think fasting on air is ridiculous. Matteo mutters he'd sooner eat crimson peas and risk curses. You grin progress. Near a dry stone wall you stumble upon 3 scarecrows dressed in ragged tunics. One wears a red kerchief, the brothers attempt to pre-wash superstition onto straw dummies. Raffaele proclaims the crows no longer swoop at Crimson Rose. Matteo retorts the crows avoid that strip because he strings up sardine heads there twice a week. Avian diplomacy is complicated. Historians still debate whether medieval farmers preferred sound deterrents or smell deterrents against birds. Evidently, the Simeones subscribe to why not both philosophy. Back at the house, the abacus comes out. Raffaele shows in projections even if half the local buyers boycott exporting to coastal cities nets windfall profits. Matteo flips the frame, presents his own beads. Every crimson bushel unsold equals debt to the landowner who collects rent in kind. You sense they have run these numbers nightly until beads squeak in their sleep. So you pitch a middle path plant, crimson on one terrace only, track yields, and sales independently share data with Fiore and Lorenzo for chemical mapping. Matteo murmurs that he still remembers their mother lighting candles during a pox outbreak. Any reminder of sickness scratches old scars. Raphael reminds him candles saved no one. Ingenuity did. This tug-of-war between caution and innovation could rip the farm apart or weave resilience if handled gently. Joke number 3 tiptoes out. Think of yourselves as a 2-horse cart, pull opposite directions, and the wheels nap forever. Even Matteo concedes a half-smile. You propose a ceremony of sorts. Raphael will sow crimson seeds with vinegar water, a nod to chemistry, while Matteo sprinkles blessed salt prepared by Padre Angelo across boundary furrows, a nod to faith. The symbolism might mollify neighbors and unify the household. Both brothers nod. Compromise tastes sweeter than either expected. Authoritative historical fact number 2 joins the lineup agronomist Pietro de Crescenza's 1304 treatise recommended alternating legumes and cereals to refresh the earth's virtue long before nitrogen cycles were understood. Rotating crimson chickpeas could therefore claim scholarly precedent, even if the scholar never met a pea that looked like it had murdered somebody. Evening shadows stretch. It's nearly time for the council's final vote. Matteo packs a sample of both seed colors into linen sachets, ties them with cord, and hands them over. Show the fathers we're not reckless, just realistic, he says. Raphael adds a jar of crimson hummus he whipped up using Isabella's leftover wisteria-inspired spice mix. Marketing within arm's reach, apparently. As you step off the veranda, the cassia tree back in town glows gold in sunset memory. Callback to plague elders, and you sense layers of story stacking like mille-feuille pastry. Science, superstition, economics, family pride. Capicolo trots ahead, nibbling a beige pea. He filched unconcerned about color-only crunch volume. Halfway down the hill, you hear the Simeone brothers arguing again, this time about whose turn to feed the oxen. You smile. Conflict persists, but seeds of compromise are planted literally. The breeze carries faint thyme scent, and the clack of abacus beads reset for another round. You pocket the sample sachets, feeling them thump your hip like eager hearts. Whatever verdict tonight's council renders these fields will keep experimenting. Fear and hope rose interleaved beneath Apulia's mercurial sun. Part 9. secret midnight trials. Night folds over Santa Croce like a velvet cloak lined with whispered wagers. The council's verdict delivered at moonrise was deliciously indecisive. No outright ban, but crimson chickpeas may be traded only after rigorous private testing. In other words, the fathers tossed the hot legume back to the townsfolk who must now prove or disprove the curse without embarrassing City Hall. Naturally, the moment the gavel fell, half the village began organizing the very sort of hush-hush experiment the decree pretended to discourage. And that is how you find yourself padding toward Padre Angelo's rear garden, well after compline lantern-hooded dog Capicolo slinking at your heel like a furry co-conspirator. The garden gate squeaks a greeting that could wake a saint, but the priest is already there. Cassock, tucked like a work apron, brandishing a soup ladle the way a knight wields a mace. Beside him, Gemma Lorenzo. Sister Fiore Bianca. The pulse merchant, and, for color coordination, Raffaele Simeoni, clutching a burlap sack of the notorious peas. Someone has pilfered 3 pewter bowls from the 3 figs. Another has nicked a small brazier from the sacristy. You offer a mock salute, joke number 1. Lovely to see the entire supply chain represented. A crescent moon chalks silver outlines on rosemary bushes and lemon trees. The air smells of citrus candle smoke and opportunity or colossal mistake. Fiore sets a copper pot over the coals, pours in well water, and drops a rusty nail callback to the vinegar trick, then hands you a phial of wine vinegar dyed purple by last night's woad. It glows like a sorcerer's cocktail. Authoritative historical fact drifts amid the greenery clandestine ordeals of bread and cheese, once settled disputes in Lombardy. If the accused could swallow a consecrated bite without choking innocence proved. Tonight's ordeal of peas follows the same digestive jurisprudence minus ecclesiastical paperwork. Historians still debate whether the choking came from divine judgment or stage fright dry mouth, but no one here fancies reenacting either scenario. Gemma produces a small hourglass, 2 minutes worth to time each tasting. The group divides into trios. You're in the first wave with Fiore and Bianca. Fiore measures 1 spoon of beige, 1 of crimson, 1 half and half. Capicolo sits like an anxious maitre ready to intervene should anyone fake a seizure for dramatic flair. The priest murmurs a minimalist grace. Dear Lord, please schedule miracles responsibly, and in you plunge. Beige pia tastes like last week's hummus. Crimson, slightly earthy but bright as if it spent summer vacation in a tomato patch. Half and half culinary detente. 2 minutes pass. No thunder, no nosebleeds, just collective listening to heartbeats like drummers with stage fright. Gemma flips the hourglass again. Second trio, Raffaele Matteo. He arrived late, grumbling but curious, and Lorenzo repeat the ritual. Odd, off-topic fact bubbles to mind during the wait. Renaissance astronomers believed lunar eclipses could bleach wine left outdoors, inspiring some innkeepers to age cheap vintages by moonlight. You share this tidbit to lighten the tension odd fact delivered. Raphael counters that maybe crimson peas are just sun-bleached too vigorously, earning a snort from Lorenzo, who insists oxidation not UV is at play. When the final grains of sand fall, everyone is still upright. Only symptom, Gemma's loud burp, which she proudly attributes to St. Martha's comfort, sneaking in earlier. Joke number 2 sails out. If belching counts as demonic activity, half the tavern's clientele are possessed nightly. Even Padre Angelo chuckles, though he crosses himself just in case. Now, for round 2, the real dare uncooked crimson peas straight from Raphael's burlap. Lorenzo argues raw legumes can upset stomachs generically. The priest counters that authenticity matters. Compromise, each volunteer chews one raw pea spits hull into the fire, swallows the rest. Heat makes the hull spark a pop, like tiny castanets punctuating the hush. You chew. It's chalky and bitter, about as charming as licking a limestone wall, but survivable. Minutes tick. Crickets chirp. A low owl hoots its own skeptical commentary. Then Mateo hiccups. Everyone freezes. Sorry, he whispers. Wine came back to say hello. Sighs of relief exhale like bellows. The owl, evidently let down, flaps off. Lorenzo unveils a parchment grid titled Symptoms versus Time. Quill poised for data. Nothing to write except all fine and one hiccup. The garden's adrenaline drains, replaced by a giddy glow. Joke number 3 arrives. Congratulations, we may have cured hunger and boredom in one chew. Even Mateo laughs no hiccup this time, data confirmed. Still, Gemma points out the experiment lacks longevity. Curses might snooze before they strike. So, Padre Angelo suggests a vigil every hour until dawn. Each participant notes any pang cramp or existential dread. If boredom counts, you'll break the data chart. Bianca volunteers her storeroom as sleep station. She has cots between burlap sacks of Pulse's neutral territory. The group agrees, gathers supplies, and tiptoes through the nave to borrow the church's brass candelabrum. We'll bring it back before matins, Father promise. Hot fact. 2. This one scholarly slides into conversation while setting up cots. Medieval philosophers believed sleep at first, cock crow, allowed demons easiest entry into dreams. Hence, some crafted silver talismans shaped like roosters. Raphael muses that maybe crimson peas simply want better REM cycles. Lorenzo threatens to test them on insomniacs next. Hours blur. You log data at midnight, 1, 2, 3. No one perishes. Bianca snores like distant thunder. Capicolo sprawls belly up beside the candelabrum, lit like an overdramatic saint in oil paint. The garden's rosemary drips silver under dew fragrance, sharp enough to substitute for espresso. Just before dawn, something does happen. Fiore wakes, coughing hard, eyes watering. Panic spikes curse. No, she explains between hacks. She fell asleep next to an open jar of powdered alum, her experimental preservative, and inhaled it. Crisis averted with a sip of Padre Angelo's sacramental wine, purely medicinal. Lorenzo duly notes alum misadventure in the chart's margin, underlining 3 times. You stick St. Roach's beeswax wafer to the page as a comic seal of approval. Sunrise bleeds peach above the olive groves, and the vigil troop shuffles outside data sheets in hand. Counting noses, still 6 plus dog. Proof of life handshake all around. Bianca pledges to display a sign Crimson Peas tested and Sanctuary approved. Padre Angelo will report to the council that Private Ordinance Ye 1A has been satisfied with 0 casualties, minus 1 dignity hiccup, and a minor alum incident. Authoritative historical fact. 2 signs off the night in 1363. A Florentine guild of bakers instituted dawn tastings of experimental bread to preempt rumors of spoilage, an early form of quality control marketing. Santa Croce just reinvented the wheel with a chickpea filling. You pocket Lorenzo's grid, thinking it will look gorgeous beside Pietro's farmer plea, and Isabella's kerchief a scrapbook of fear, slowly turning into footnote. Capicolo noses your hand, expecting breakfast. You grin, tell him he's earned omelet rights. The others drift toward sunrise tasks, Fiore to her furnace. Lorenzo to the pigeon loft lab. Gemma to ready coffee-strength barley brew at the Three Figs, Bianca to raise her new sign, and the priest to nap before matins rings again. As you and the dog amble back through dew-wet alleys, you realize curses often die, not in thunderbolts, but in paperwork spreadsheets, vigils, price lists, recipe cards, paper cuts to superstition's jugular. And yet a small, sneaky part of you almost misses the thrill. Don't worry, markets open in an hour and fresh rumors cook faster than eggs. For now, savor dawn's lavender, the rosemary breeze, and the knowledge that sometimes the scariest midnight trial ends with nothing more fatal than a hiccup and a bad alum sniff. Part 10. Folklore meets law. You awaken, bleary-eyed, but victorious to the clamor of Santa Croce's civic trumpeters, 3 apprentice musicians whose idea of C major sounds like arguing geese trapped in copper funnels. Capicolo raises his shaggy head from your blanket pile at the Three Figs, sighs the sigh of a dog who did not sign up for municipal fanfare, and promptly hides beneath the bed. Breakfast can wait. Bureaucracy beckons. Outside, banners of gold and crimson. Yes, the council has embraced irony flutter from the loggia of the Palazzo Pubblico, where today a special consiglio straordinario will draft the first ordinance in Apulian history, to mention legumes by Pantone number. Gemma hands you a fig pastry and a wink. Go teach the fathers which way their quill should wiggle. Joke number 1 sneaks out mid-chew. If I change the ink to pink, we'll have our ruling in rhymes. She nearly snorts espresso through her nose. Wasted caffeine is a sin, but she forgives you. The piazza buzzes like a beehive, wearing academic robes. Delegates from neighboring towns arrive with satchels of their own colored curiosities. Golden lentils, blue speckled barley, each hoping Santa Croce's headache will set helpful precedent. You step through bronze doors into a hall stone cool despite rising heat, and the smell of parchment beeswax and nervous sweat crowds your senses. At the semicircular bench, counselors polish rhetoric. Countess Isabella reclines on a velvet chair, lavender kerchief resplendent. Father Angelo rings under his eyes from last night's vigil, clutches a folder labeled Empirical Data and Almighty Mercy. Lorenzo and Sister Fiore lean over a crate of glass vials like chemists awaiting Judgment Day. A herald bangs a staff. Business begins. First up, reading of the proposed Lex Caesaris Rubri law of the red chickpea. Article 1 politely states that any foodstuff displaying unnatural sanguine coloration must undergo proving rites. Article 2 assigns enforcement to the beadle and 2 volunteer taste jurors. You smother a laugh, joke number 2. So Santa Croce invents the Department of Snack Security. The council doesn't giggle, but the scribe's quill wobbles. Your turn to testify. You present Lorenzo's vinegar chart, Fiore's soil map, Bianca's zero-casualty ledger, and Matteo's dual-seed sachets, evidence piled like a lasagna of logic. You even produce the hiccup note as light seasoning. An authoritative historical fact seasons the speech Illustrious Signori in 1287. Bologna's Statuti del Popolo codified mold inspection for bread saving thousands from ergot poisoning. Likewise, we can regulate hue without banishment. Heads nod. Saving citizens and taxes always scores points. Opposition rises in the form of Procurator Fabrizio, a man whose powdered wig sits askew like a meringue left in the sun. He brandishes a scroll of folk tales. Goats born hairless wells turned to ink and pièce de résistance. The Sirena Rosa, a crimson-scaled mermaid said to surface only when cursed peas float out to sea. The gallery hums storytelling, trumps spreadsheets every time. Fabrizio smirks. Historians still debate whether such marvels are allegory or archive, but prudence counsels caution. Isabella arches a brow. She enjoys allegory, but hates supply line panic. Your rebuttal deploys an odd, off-topic fact. Esteemed counsel in Siena, 1312, a court tried a wheel of pecorino for witchcraft because it rolled downhill into a chapel. Verdict, cheese acquitted, gravity blamed. Laughter ricochets off frescoed walls. Fabrizio's wig wilts further. You press. Let us not convict Chickpeas for the crime of being photogenic. Even Padre Angelo chuckles, that's joke. Gur3 checked off. Debate pivots to economics. Aldo the steward, summoned as expert witness, testifies that noble kitchens are back-ordering wisteria broth faster than farms can sow. Banning crimson peas, he claims, would strangle gastronomy's golden goose. Pietro the farmer counters with a tremor, fluctuating prices and rumor taxes may strangle actual geese his children's dinners. The chamber quiets. Parchment flutter becomes thunder. Isabella proposes compromise a labeling scheme. Every sack of crimson peas must bear the seal of Prabatum. Prabatum confirming it passed midnight trials or any future regimen the council defines. Producers fund taste jurors through a modest levy. Consumers avoid roulette. Treasury collects fees. Bureaucracy high-fives itself. You note privately that paperwork reproduces quicker than rabbits on spring ale, but at least it's domesticated panic into parchment form. Quill scratching fills the chamber. Final wording hammered out. Testing minimum 6 adults. 1 cleric. 1 physician 8-hour observation. Stamping bags sealed with red wax depicting St. Nicholas and a chickpea halo. Penalties violators paraded with crimson paint splotches and made to donate 1 month's harvest to the poor. Fabrizio lobbies to add a serene monitoring clause. Isabella shuts it down with a glare that could blanch truffles. Vote called 8 for 1 against 2 abstain. They were doodling mermaid peas when counting happened. Gavel slams. Lex Cicerus Rubri becomes law. Trumpets outside squeal triumph. Capicolo howls along quite possibly in key. Council adjourns to the loggia for celebratory mulberry cordial. You linger, admiring frescoes newly safe from bean-induced doom. Fiore sidles up, asks if you noticed the irony science had to sneak in, wearing folklore's cape to get a seat at the table. You admit that results matter more than costumes besides capes are dramatic. She gifts you a vial of clear extract. Label reads, Fear Solution Batch 2. On the steps, townsfolk await news like gamblers awaiting dice. Padre Angelo announces the verdict. Cheers erupt, mixed with a few groans from embargo enthusiasts. Bianca hoists a placard, certified Crimson Here first legal vendor on record. Matteo and Raffaele shake hands, tentative but genuine. Their test terrace now licensed adventure. Pietro breathes relief levy, beats mystery any day. Isabella's cook appears waving purchase orders stamped with the new seal banquet season guaranteed. Even Fabrizio finds lemonade in defeat. He begins drafting a pamphlet, Serena Rosa True, Tales and Tourist Routes. Confident folklore will still pay rent. You suspect next market day will feature mermaid-shaped pastries. Entrepreneurial creep delicious. As sunset bruises the sky, violet, you stroll toward the cassia-shaded courtyard legal scroll, tucked under arm Capicolo trotting proud. The air smells of lemon parchment and soot from celebratory bonfires, popping like applause. You realize law did not erase folklore. It folded it origami style into a stamp, a story, a tiny wax saint perched on every sack of peas. Fear now has dosage instructions and a filing fee. Authoritative historical fact numero 2 puts an epilogue on the evening many Italian city-states created guild-run testing boards. Wine in Siena cheese, in Parma silk, in Lucca turning superstition into standardized quality control that still echoes in today's dock labels. Santa Croce just added legumes to the genealogical tree of Italian appellations, night settles. Gemma waves you into the 3 figs for free supper in honor of our new carbohydrate constitution. You promise to join after one last look at the piazza, where children chase fireflies between stalls, decked in red ribbons Fear's wardrobe, repurposed into festival decor. Somewhere, a minstrel strikes up a ditty about mermaids and chickpeas. Spectators clap, coins clink, and you realize stories rarely die, they adapt, trademark pending. Capicolo noses your calf supper now, philosophy later. You laugh, pocket the fear solution, and head inside, trusting that tomorrow's sunrise will find Santa Croce not curse-free. Nothing ever is, but at least legally, politely, and profitably cursed. And, under a sensible labeling scheme who could ask for more, Part 11. Merchants' Smuggling Schemes. The ink on Lex Sicarus Rubri is barely dry when the loophole hunters begin sharpening their chisels. You are awakened before dawn by frantic knocking. Bianca's lanky cousin Rodrigo, part spice peddler, part rumor. Freight train breathes chef emergency through the keyhole of your rented garret. Capicolo growls, but curiosity drags you upright. Rodrigo explains that 2 celebrity cooks from Bari have sailed up the coast waving silk purses and insisting on uncensored crimson peas for a banquet honoring a visiting Byzantine envoy. Certified beans won't do too mainstream. They want the untasted thrill of contraband, the gritty terroir of rebellion. Gemma once said chefs are half pirate anyway. It seems the other half has just inherited a ship. You throw on boots, still smelling of cassia blossom slip St. Roch's beeswax disc into a pocket for luck, and follow Rodrigo through alleyways misted with bakery steam. The docks thrum like a hive on espresso gulls, shrieking ropes, creaking fishmongers arguing whether today's squid look judgmental. A narrow galley named La Lucertola bobs at the far pier hull painted serpent green. Her captain, Isotta, a woman whose tricorn sits aslant like a wink, studies a ledger that might actually bite if mishandled. She greets you with a handshake, sticky from candied ginger. Need to move legumes quieter than a bishop's flatulence, she says. Joke number 1 slips out. Nothing gasses the rumor mill like forbidden fiber. Isotta cackles, revealing a gold canine tooth shaped like a tiny anchor. Below deck, burlap bales labeled dried fennel hide, inner sacks of illicit crimson peas. Rodrigo produces Isabella's discarded men-at-arms tabard's scarlet cloth to wrap the peas so any accidental spillage can pass as laundry runoff. Clever, if a bit fragrant. Authoritative historical fact, sales in medieval Apulian salt smugglers routinely dyed contraband sacks the same hue as official salt tax bags to fool customs officers who inspected by moonlight. Coloring cargo is a time-honored dodge. Isotta sketches the plan on a cracked seashell slipped down the coast to the tiny cove. Cala delle Briciole unload to mule train. Cut inland through olive groves rendezvous behind the abandoned aqueduct. Then sprint the final league to Bari. Under cover of a traveling puppet troupe, marionettes make excellent camouflage. because authorities seldom frisk a wooden donkey. Historians still debate whether puppet wagons spread more gossip or contraband along the Via Traiana. But their ledger of suspicious coincidences is impressive. You volunteer as quality control. Rodrigo hands you a spoonful from a smuggled sack flavor, earthy, iron-sweet rebellion tinged. Capicolo samples one and sneezes crimson dust across the deck. Isoda jokes the dogs just christened the voyage. That's joke number 2. Sails snap full. Oarsmen chant a work song about octopi who owe them money. The horizon glitters while gulls shadow the galley like tax auditors with wings. You lean against the gunwale sea spray, peppering your face, and savor the ASMR hush between wave slaps. Hush, swish, hush, swish. All secrets purring in briny Morse code. Halfway to the cove, a patrol cutter appears, Santa Croce's modest Navy 1 boat. 2 crossbows and 3 bored Marines practicing sea shanties off-key. Isata orders the crew to hoist a barrel of salted sardines onto deck aromatic enough to moonlight as fog. The cutter veers wide. Nobody wants to inspect fish that smell like they've written their wills. Odd, deliciously off-topic fact, medieval physicians prescribed sardine brine as earache cure. Apparently, if the smell doesn't distract you from pain, nothing will. You dock beneath limestone cliffs quilted in purple sea thrift. Mules await each tagged with puppet troupe emblems. Comedia masks painted on saddle blankets. Harlequin, Pantalone, Columbina. Rodrigo's sister, Valentina. Puppet master extraordinaire counts bales and tucks them beneath prop crates, fake castle towers, a dragon head, a stage curtain patched with old excommunication notices. They're heavy. Waste? Not, she shrugs. Joke number 3. If the Inquisition saw this, they'd charge rent for product placement. The inland trek begins. Cicadas ratchet up like faulty clock springs, olive leaves glint silver, and dust puffs beneath hooves with each clandestine step. To fight boredom, Valentina rehearses dialogue for her marionettes. Soon, the trail rings with falsetto quips about love debt and bean curses. You answer in deadpan baritone, accidentally inventing a 2-person 6-character improv troupe. Capicolo provides percussion tail-thumping panniers. Near sundown, you reach the crumbling arches of the Roman aqueduct. Bricks streaked rust-red fitting camouflage for your cargo. Lanterns ignite, moths flutter, conspirators converge. The Bari chefs clad in embroidered aprons. Eyes shining like gamblers about to roll loaded dice. They taste a raw pea, pronounce it danger in miniature, and pay a sota in silver florins, plus 2 wheels of Caciocavallo aged in walnut shells, a bribe you intend to turn into breakfast. The chefs hustle off with their puppet escort. You stay behind to erase footprints, literally sweeping dust with olive boughs as stars flicker on. Isoda tallies profits, tips. Her tricorn fear makes fine margins. You agree, but warn that stamped peas could flood the market soon. She shrugs. There's always another oddity to smuggle blue figs, glowworm ink, maybe mermaid pastries once Fabrizio's pamphlet drops. Entrepreneurs molt, but never die. As you trudge home under a sky dense with constellations, St. Roch's wafer warm against your chest, you mull an invisible ledger. Law calms townsfolk, yet outlaw demand blossoms in the shadows. Regulation and rebellion dance a waltz older than the aqueduct stones crunching under your boots. The air smells of sage donkey sweat, and the peppery thrill of mischief executed with minimal collateral damage, minus 1 sneeze. Back in Santa Croce. The 3 Figs still hums. Gemma keeps late hours for people returning from adventures. they'll claim were a quick walk. She serves you caciocavallo slices, drizzled with fig, jam, salt crystals, popping like distant fireworks on your tongue. Capicolo snores under the table, perhaps dreaming of puppet dragons stuffed with legumes. Authoritative historical fact, Nadrantau. Slips into conversation as Gemma polishes cups in 1405. Venetian mercers smuggled pepper through Dalmatian ports during embargo, labeling barrels ink pigment, because customs clerks feared black stains on tunics more than fiscal sins. Today, crimson peas wear fennel costumes. Tomorrow, pepper might masquerade as mermaid scales. Customs conga lines march on. Gemma raises a final toast. To small rebellions that spice the soup but don't burn the pot. You clink, mugs, foam hisses, and the tavern's hearth snaps a log in applause. Outside, midnight strokes the bell tower once soft, nonchalant, as if blessing or forgiving your smuggler cameo. You yawn, bones pleasantly, tired conscience only mildly singed. Upstairs, moonlight drips through shutters, sketching stripes across parchment notes stuffed with new contraband recipes. You realize every law invites an asterisk, every fear a side hustle, and every chickpea. No matter the shade finds a hungry audience eventually. Pulling the blanket over your shoulders, you whisper to the dozing dog, all in a night's work partner. Somewhere far down the coast, a chef in Bari is plating forbidden peas beneath Byzantine candlelight guests, gasping at their wicked hue. Sleep sneaks in, gentle as sea tide carrying the rhythmic creak of oarlocks you'll swear you still hear. Paperwork may civilize panic, but stories slip the leash and sail off into moonlit coves. And if another red-hot rumor washes back on tomorrow's tide, well, you've got boots by the bed. A dog with a smuggler's nose and a standing invitation from La Lucertola. Part 12. Monastic gardens flourish. Dawn drips honey gold over the limestone ridges north of town, and your feet crunch along a goat trail toward Sant Agata in Silvis Abbey, so named because the forest once crept right to its doors, until pious sheep ate the evidence. Capicolo pads beside you tail metronoming in slow, sleepy thumps. A rumor floated into the Three Figs last night, wedged between gossip about mermaid-shaped pastries and a lute player with gout. The Abbey's charity kitchens are quietly raising their own stock of crimson chickpeas. Free food for beggars, zero paperwork for City Hall. You volunteered to investigate because curiosity is your default breakfast. The track winds through rosemary thickets dew, flicking your ankles with herbal confetti. Stone walls appear, then turret-topped gatehouses so squat they look like chess rooks carved by a distracted novice. A lay brother greets you with a bow so deep his scapular brushes gravel. He introduces himself as Brother Arcangelo Gardner, beekeeper, and unofficial rumor filter. The subtle smile says he's used to peasants showing up brandishing folklore like unpaid invoices. He leads you into the cloister garden, where raised beds radiate from a sun-bleached wellhead. Lavender hums with bees. Onions thrust green quills skyward. And there, shady quadrant, third bed on the left rows of chickpeas, glowing crimson in the dappled light, like garnets buried just beneath the veil of morning. You inhale damp earth and warm terracotta. It smells like fresh bread wearing cologne. Joke number 1 purrs out either these peas are saints in disguise, or they've hired an excellent stylist. Arcangelo's chuckle is barely audible, as if he fears startling the basil. Authoritative historical fact. Benedictine and Cistercian houses across medieval Italy often served as experimental farms, sharing drought-tolerant seed strains with surrounding villages. long before anyone coined the term agricultural extension service. Arcangelo confirms the peas arrived via a pilgrim from Antioch 5 winters ago, sprouted red, and the monks simply shrugged. Color is God's business. Feeding the hungry is theirs. They nicknamed the variety Cicer ruber caritatis, charity red. You trail him down flagstone paths, while novice brothers snip chamomile blossoms, and Sister Hortensia, the master herbalist, recites psalms that rhyme convincingly with Latin plant names. She pauses to inspect your St. Roch wafer, nods approval, and gifts you a sprig of rue against nosy demons. Capicolo sneezes in protest, perhaps at the herb's camphor punch. Arcangelo kneels beside a chickpea plot, unearths a pod, and cracks it open. 3 seeds nestle inside like tiny heartbeats. He invites you to taste raw. Apparently, the midnight trials have gone monastic. You chew, noting a surprising sweetness less metallic than yesterday's smuggler stash. The gardener explains these peas grow in soil, mulched with crushed oyster shells carted up from the coast calcium buffers. Acidity pigment softens, flavor rounds. Historians still debate whether medieval monks understood pH or simply observed cause and effect, then praised Providence for the miracle. Either way, the result is a legume that scares no one and shows up fashionably blushing. Odd off-topic fact drifts in on the breeze. 12th century Cistercians in Burgundy kept pet hedgehogs to patrol kitchen gardens for slugs. Arcangelo confirms the abbey tried that, but the hedgehogs kept rolling downhill into the fish pond like spiky dumplings, so now they rely on toads instead. Capicolo eyes nearby toad suspiciously. Interspecies HR remains complicated. You ask about city ordinances. Arcangelo shrugs. Charity produce leaves the gate at dawn in plain sacks. No wax seals, no fees, straight to soup cauldrons for the hospital and poorhouse. Joke number 2 slides out, smuggling for the soul, first felony that counts as a beatitude. Arcangelo smiles wider, then grows solemn. If council levies taxes on charity beans, the poor would feel it first. That's why the abbey keeps quiet, though rumors sprout faster than basil. He gestures to a low shed where Brother Sebastiano operates a hand-cranked thresher powered by 2 novice monks who alternate pumping like blacksmiths forging grace. Piles of crimson peas spill into woven baskets, each tagged with parchment Hospitium Orphanorum Pilgrim's Table. The efficiency would make bureaucrats salivate if they knew. You help load baskets onto a wood-wheeled cart. Capicolo hops aboard, settling between sacks like a furry figurehead. Sebastiano hands you the reins. Apparently, you're promoted to volunteer carter. The route threads through back lanes away from market inspectors. Lavender hedges scratch the cart sides, releasing scent strong enough to join the choir. Sun warms your shoulders. Birds trade gossip about your cargo, but promise not to snitch. First stop, St. Lucia's Hospital low stone building, where the infirm gather amid whiffs of rosemary and boiled linen. Nuns receive the peas as if precious relics. One chirps, "No more barley, gruel monotony." You note for future jokes that even patients crave color variety. Onward, you deliver to the orphanage where children squeal at crimson beans like rubies they're allowed to eat. A small girl presses a pea to her ear to hear its story. You kneel, whisper. It says you'll grow tall and kind. She pockets the seed with solemnity that guts you more than any midnight curse. By noon, basket's empty cart rattles back Abbey Ward. Arcangelo waits with clay cups of spiced almond milk, implying that charity runs on calories and caffeine analogs. Joke number 3. surfaces St. Almond, patron of sleepy couriers. The gardener snorts into his drink almond foam and beard. You stroll the cloister's covered walk. Frescoes faded, but still depicting miracles featuring livestock. One shows Jonah swallowed by a whale helpfully labeled strictly symbolic in Latin. Monks have a humor column, apparently. Arcangelo admits some brothers worry city scrutiny could clamp down. Others argue transparency could convert skeptics. He asks your opinion. You ponder, revealing the garden might inspire trust or fresh levies. Perhaps a controlled tour for counselors paired with a cooking demo by the hospital, cooks could showcase virtue over vice. The gardener nods. He'll take it to chapter meeting. Authoritative historical fact, Seru, glides through the mint-scented arcade in 1234. Pope Gregory IX praised Umbrian monasteries for providing famine relief via kernels of uncommon hue evidence that unusual crops once symbolized hope rather than dread. Arcangelo eyes his beds proudly. Maybe history circles back like a benediction. As afternoon shadows pool, you bid farewell. He hands you a linen pouch of Cicer ruber caritatis seeds with planting instructions. Bury under crescent moon water, with collected dew share half your harvest. A monastic NDA, if you will. Capicolo carries it gently in his jaws like a holy fetch quest. Descending the goat trail, you glance back. The abbey rests in sun-splashed serenity, crimson rose flickering beneath olive branches gardens that rewrite the chickpea story, one humble ladle at a time. Fear shrinks in the presence of quiet generosity. Curses can't compete with free lunch. Back in Santa Croce, market stalls glitter. Legal seals drip, wax, and smugglers tally profits. But you walk lighter, knowing a parallel economy of kindness hums uphill. If lunatic chefs and loophole traders represent the heartbeat of commerce, perhaps monks provide its counter-melody, soft, steady verdant, red-tinged, tuned to the stomachs of the forgotten. Capicolo trots ahead, pausing where the cassia tree shadows the elder bench. Nonna Loretta waves. You wave back, promising to bring her some charity red peas for her next broth. She nods sagely, as if she saw this chapter scrolling across the sky all along. Somewhere, church bells practice evening chords, prepping for vespers. You head to the Three Figs pouch of seeds, cradled like fragile hope mind, humming with plans, council tours, charity tasters, maybe a hedgehog fundraiser. Long road, yet before crimson chickpeas bloom free of rumor. But today's harvest planted more than calories, it sowed legible kindness. And that you reflect is the sort of curse breaker no gavel can draft and no smuggler can undercut. Part 13. Drought and Desperation. Dust rides the wind like powdered parchment as you trudge across Santa Cruz.